I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 podcast. Happy Monday, November 4th. Recording this a couple of days after the Brazilian Grand Prix. And he is back.
Oh, rejoice! The official anthem is back. Oh, doesn't this hit like
Do a barrel roll.
Ricci? Doesn't this hit beautifully, Ricci?
He has risen.
He is
has
back!
risen.
He is back on top! Rejoice, Max Verstappen fans. There you go.
That honestly is going to make a great reel. But yes, hello, Andrew. Good to see you. Yes, since it's been 130 something days since Max Verstappen has last won a race. And honestly, this is probably one of his top race wins. To think about it, going from P17 to winning a race in the wettest conditions probably possible that we've seen since watching this race. We have so much to impact about the Brazilian Grand Prix. I have nowhere to start, but I think let's just go on the start. Let's just talk. I guess general statement I think I'll make about the weekend is I think it's over for the Drivers' Championship. It's over. I never thought that it was in sight personally, but like when you race like a champion like Max Verstappen did on that Sunday, like hand in the towel, McLaren. I wish Erica could be here for this episode. Focus on the constructors. That should be for the rest of the season.
Ricci, I think we witnessed the greatest single wet race performance in F1 history this past weekend. Considering where Max's car has been for the last 10 rounds, not being able to be at the front, as Ayrton said, I always say, rain was the great equalizer. And it really comes down to pace and it comes down to skill. And Max just showed why he is the greatest wet weather performer of his generation currently. Like we could say Lewis Hamilton, but currently right now, if you were to ask anybody, Max Verstappen is the guy in wet weather races.
Like I wouldn't just say it was simply lovely. It was just masterclass. And I mean, we can get into the rest of the race, but from just the confidence his team had on that first stint of those tires and just repeatedly just doing fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap, where we saw like a significant amount of drivers. We saw, Colapinto crash in the wall. We saw Lance Stroll have a malfunction on the formation lap. We saw Nico Hulkenberg get black flagged because people had to move his car. And like the amount of people that were just struggling with the conditions, mind you, I don't know if that's a debate in itself that they should have raced. I mean, they tried to move the race back, and first time since I think 2019, we saw qualifying on a Sunday. Drivers were up at like 4:30 in the morning for qualifying at 7:30. It was one of those races where you just sat back in like awness. And I mean, yes, I am a Ferrari fan. You are an Aston Martin fan. Erica is a McLaren fan. But like I bet Tyler was so happy on Sunday. And I think, there's a reason why Max has won 3 world championships, and in Vegas he will clinch his 4th.
Honestly, because, when you look at it from the entire case of the weekend, he felt that there was a lot of factors going against him. We'll talk about what happened in qualifying, what kind of led to his P17 position. But the fact that he was able to start from the farthest he's ever back to win a Grand Prix, and Lando completely choking the bag from going from P1 down to P6. I know he got unlucky with regards to some of the timing of the safety car and the red flag, but he just wasn't competitive this race. I don't know how to put it, but he didn't have the pace to fight for the lead at any position. Considering how he got overtaken in the first lap by Russell, right at not even like the first lap, it was the first turn he got overtaken by Russell and just wasn't able to go back him to a lead. He got it close, but he He just didn't have that pace in the McLaren this weekend, and even had to like offer team orders for him to even gain a better position. Asking Piastri to switch positions so that they can mitigate the points. But the Dutchman's lead has been at 44-62 now over Norris, and there's 86 potential points left. So, I mean, barring an absolute meltdown from Red Bull, this is over. And I wish Erica was here to talk about just there's so many key moments, and we'll probably talk about this at the end of the season, where McLaren screwed up this title fight to actually now lead it to this point. So 134 days since his last win, lowest grid spot for him, and you could just see the emotion on his face and in his and his radio comments. This meant a lot to him today, this past Sunday.
This was one of 3 F1 races to have won by a driver starting in 17th place. One of them was actually Kimi Raikkonen's triumph for McLaren, ironically, in the 2005 Japanese Grand Prix. And I think, let's face it, I think there is obviously some accomplishments that McLaren can be very happy with this season, but in reality, I think they weren't just there yet for the drivers and weren't there. Well, maybe constructors, I think they could still have a factor, but like there can't be any more screw ups for the remainder of the year. They should be happy. Yeah.
When you're leading the Constructors Championship, you arguably have the best car, right? In theory.
You should, but it seems that but there's been moments throughout the season, Andrew, that, sorry to interrupt you, but like even if you're leading at the front, and we've talked about like this inexperience of leading a race, and how many times, or the sports bets have people put money on Lando losing it after lap 1. They're like,
that's a 6th out of his last 7 pole positions. He's lost the lead in the first lap.
Yeah, so like the stats can just prove it himself that they still have a lot to learn, and he needs to go into the offseason and mentally prepare. And like I was listening to one podcast before, it's like we all joke that Max Verstappen, like after a race day, he goes online and plays like online streaming or racing till like 2 a.m. There's a reason why he's a 3-time world champion. And if you need to get in that mindset to be a world champion, you got to be the first one in the garage. You got to be the last one out of the garage, just like Michael Schumacher was. And I'm pretty sure Ayrton Senna was the same. But yeah, I think yes, a lot of things that McLaren can learn from this year. But like a good example this weekend was another possibility where, yes, Saturday sprint race was very helpful for them. They did what they had to do. But then the things fell off on Sunday.
Well, and that's, you even saw that. We even heard Max said, when he was a kid and he was karting, right? Yost made him drive out in the wet weather when other people were sitting in the paddock or in the, back in the garage, right? He was always out there, basically freezing his hands off to drive in the wet weather. And that sort of preparation, I know it sounds intense, and we know Yost is a super intense guy, and sometimes maybe he goes over the edge. But it's that type of training that gets you to this position today, right? That gets him to be a 3-time world championship and arguably driving the race of his life, to be in a position to be in his 4th, to secure his 4th world championship, without any further question. I was going to say, overall, this race was probably the greatest race of the season. And one of my favorites that I've watched in a really long time. This thing had everything. Even from qualifying session, right? Like this, for me, it really started, like this whole day of chaos started in the qualifying session.
And I think it was, the postponement of qualifying marked it the first time race day qualifying session in over 5 years. And that actually, it was the 2019 Japanese Grand Prix where they did qualifying on the Sunday. Had 5 separate red flags due to crashes of Fernando Colapinto, Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and Alex Albon. And I don't know if you know this stat, but it tied the record for the most red flags during qualifying with the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix in 2022.
Well, and with the 3-hour difference between the ending of qualifying and the time to start the race, I didn't think we were going to have 20 cars on the grid, to be honest with you. I was lucky to even see both Aston Martins make it onto the grid
Do a barrel
to
roll.
begin with. But the fact that the engineering teams and the mechanics for Ferrari, for Williams, for Aston Martin, turn those cars around. I know for Albon they weren't able to, but to get four of those five back into play for the start of the race, like my hat's off to those engineers and to those mechanics because that's a lot of work for 3 hours.
Not only that, and especially just like because I think there was some not I don't know if you want to call it questionable calls by the FIA, but like we want to talk about Q3's red flag, which was like 40 seconds after like a potential double waved yellow. I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess the mentality of everybody, like, even if when there was some like why was not a red flag called during that qualifying that period, just that they're able to go out and say screw it, whatever happened, let's go fix this car.
Yeah, what confused me is that like you waited 40 seconds from a double wave like in that at the end of Q2 where people were allowed to finish their times.
Yeah.
And maybe because it's where Stroll was on track. But I mean that's a mega safety issue in the wet, right? Anything can happen. Car could spin in, and create further accidents. It took 40 seconds for that Q2. But when in Q3 when we had those two separate red flags due to Albon Alonso, it was like 5-10 seconds. It was bang bang. Yellow flag comes out, boom, red flag comes out. So I can see why Max Verstappen was pissed off in the sense that, when you have like that time difference, you think there's some like works behind the scenes going on that are going to affect your results. I don't blame him. And I think that was ultimately a huge motivator for him to run the race that he did. He was just truly pissed off, truly annoyed. He was able to focus in on the race after starting in P17 because of qualifying. But yeah, the FIA again, just the inconsistency is what is really just resonating with fans being pissed off about the sport sometimes, and it was frustrating to watch because it's like, how do you dictate one safety incident is greater than another, so to speak, right?
I don't know if that confusion also started to boil into Sunday, just with the situation that, yes, then there was open spots on the track because, with Alex Albon and then people not doing proper formations. And then, we had issues with the 2 formation laps and then laps had to be cut down because of this. I don't want to
talk
steal
about Lance Stroll for a second.
Yeah, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but please go right ahead.
What an embarrassing guy. Absolutely embarrassing performance at the start. Like you crash out of Q2, right? Your mechanics worked 3+ hours to get this car ready. And what do? Absolutely lock the rear tires on the formation lap alone, right? Which is fine. You're still in the, you kind of hit the barrier. You can go back to the pit, get a new wing, come out. The fact that this guy avoided the tarmac like it was the plague, and instead thought, oh, maybe it's a good idea to go through the gravel pit.
Do a barrel roll.
Just beaches the car and wastes all the effort and time from the mechanics to put this car onto the grid. And that's how you're going to repay him. Absolute joke from him this weekend. And he needs to issue a team apology if he hasn't already, because that is not how you treat people in this world.
You had moments of Checo just completely putting his car into the, like, I want to call it swamp.
It was a swamp. It was a swamp. The amount of rain that track had, it was Interlagos this weekend, not Interlagos.
Do a barrel roll.
Huge safety infringement at the start of the race by Lando. Not waiting until the green lights to go for them to then redo the formation lap, and that created a ton of confusion. We'll talk about his penalty and whether it was justified later on. But just like you knew the race was going to be nuts when all this confusion is happening. We had Mercedes deciding to change the tire pressure on the grid, which you can't do at all. And they know that rule. It's like, why are you doing that to begin with? And then, yeah, let's just go into the race in terms of, amazing start for Max, first and foremost. Made up 7 positions in 1 lap and 1 turn. to go on. And then, George taking advantage of Lando's poor start. And from there, it was some really great racing on track, though, to be honest with you. And Alpine, John.
I'm sorry. What? Like that okay. I
Well, it
mean
just
that
goes to prove that their car is an actual boat because they're faster on water than they are on land.
and I mean, I don't know if you read that, but them jumping 3 spots in the constructors, that like probably gets them like 50 million more dollars to spend.
Yeah, great race. I mean, like profitable race for them. And like the way that they were interacting after the race, laughing and enjoying each other's company. I'm like, what is going on here?
And these
But
are these are two drivers that we know hit like
they have a history.
they
They don't get along,
but
to put it
they
mildly.
they did get along that weekend, I guess.
Well, it was of course, the cherry on top for me this weekend was the double Alpine podium because in no world did I think that that would be the case. It, it was exciting because we saw somebody else, another team on the podium this weekend, and wasn't expecting to be Alpine in that case, but just like another like wild moments. Hulkenberg and the black flag, which was I thought hilarious. He spun out. He spun out. I think it was like lap 27, and he got caught. His front got caught in a drain, and the marshals basically come over, lift his car up so he can get off the drain, and then he joins back on track.
And he's like, "You think that nobody is gonna see you?" Like when we watched that at Trinity Common, like I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, "You don't think there's a camera on you when everything's going on?" Like,
There's literally a camera on his car that points right out that they could just see it happening, playing out. And it was so funny because when they were during the red flag, Ted Kravitz found out on his headset before the Haas team did, and he commentated like their reactions. Gary Gannon, like Hulk's engineer, was just befuddled, had no idea as to why. And then it was funny because Hulkenberg, when he found out, was like, yeah, okay, I guess I got caught, sort of idea. Like, I just got caught with his hand stuck in the cookie jar at that point.
I just want to talk about before we continue on with the Haas and the rest of the race, just some significant points about Alpine's double podium. We've talked about this. They've not completed a single racing lap inside the top 5 all season coming into Brazil. Esteban Ocon briefly led before coming second in his 150th Grand Prix weekend. It was the squad's first double podium under the Alpine brand and their first time since the Spanish Grand Prix in 1997 that 2 French drivers had finished on top of the podium. And yeah, just go back to it. Like, yeah, they jumped 3 places in the constructors and like jumped over Haas and I think jumped over, Williams and very big weekend for them. But I just can't get over the black flag. That's the first time I think we've seen a black flag in our times watching this race, this season. Oh, no,
Yeah,
sorry, season.
I haven't seen a black flag in a long. We've seen like black and white flags all the time, but a black flag for a straight up disqualification doesn't happen. Usually, we see the disqualifications after the race based on review. But man, I thought it was interesting to watch nonetheless. But I guess like what I just can't harp enough was just watching Max dominate his way through the field like that. That was a champion's drive that weekend. And if you're like McLaren, you got to be just shaking your head at this point because you have to wonder why. What happened that caused, Lando had some issues. He went off a couple times where he lost key positions later on in the race on some restarts. And to be honest with you, I thought Max kind of got stuck behind Ocon in the first restart. That was to me the only blip of the race was where Ocon built like a 6-second lead. And we were going to have to talk about Esteban Ocon being a Formula One winner again in like that boat of a car in Alpine, which would have been just an absolute shock. Still amazing that they finished P2 and P3, like with the both Alpine drivers, but that safety car was crucial for Max to be able to get the jump on Ocon again and kind of get the second time around him to go for P to P1.
there was probably a little bit of help for that Red Bull, but it's too bad because, we've seen such great driving with Max, obviously the start of the season and the race that way. And we can't really say the same as his partner. It's getting harder every
It's
weekend.
sad to watch,
Yeah.
don't you
And
think?
you probably think he probably wants to retire himself because he feels defeated.
Well, I don't know if he does because he keeps going on about how it's his seat, it's his seat, it's his seat, but it's like, at what point do you have to like pull back the curtain and understand that you're not as capable as you once were? And both like V-carb drivers finished ahead of them this weekend.
Oh my goodness.
So you were fourth of four in the Red Bull team in terms of performance. And again, there's Max, right? Being the only one to
He's basically carrying the constructors for them. They're like to hold to. Well, I know they're not going to win it, but he's the reason why most of their points they have this season.
Yeah. So Red Bull combined between the two drivers have led 504 laps this year overall. Of those 504, how many do Perez has led?
0.
One.
Oh,
Max Verstappen has led 503 laps this year, and Sergio Perez led one lap.
I'm just gonna guess.
Ocon has more led laps than Sergio Perez.
Can I say was it Mexico? I don't think it was.
I don't know, but I mean, like this is a pivotal time where you have to. If you're Christian Horner, you need to understand that he's not the driver he once was. And you're in this cutthroat business that you've put yourself in for all these years. I think it's either you look at Liam or you look at Yuki to move into that Red Bull seat for next season. Because if you want to be quote unquote contending for a Constructors Championship, you need to have two people. You need to have both drivers in the points on a consistent basis, and Checo just does not provide that to you anymore. And it's sad because I've always been an advocate for Checo, right, and getting his spot on the team. But this year has just been so tough on him, and unfortunately, I just think he's past his prime and is for being on a premium team.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It gets harder every week to justify him being in that seat, and especially with the success that Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda have been driving in the RB V-card car, and especially with Liam Lawson coming in to replace Daniel Ricciardo, who is partying it up at Buffalo Bills games. I don't know if you saw this weekend,
That
but
was awesome.
yeah, no. So like, I wouldn't even be surprised if there's muddles about like doing a swap or something before Las Vegas. And think about it. The next race is pretty much gonna clinch the drivers' championship. And I mean, we could talk about Ferrari. Not the most ideal weekend with Carlos going out and Sainz. I mean, with Charles getting P5, I think there's a lot of kind of factors that happen. And I guess maybe it was the qualifying, the wet conditions, and just the unluckiness. But I think you just gotta have to hope for a better weekend. And especially, and I also don't think that maybe Red Bull is going to do as well in Las Vegas, just the track. And I don't think McLaren's going to be that good in Vegas. And like, I kind of think that Ferrari could bounce back at a track in Vegas. So I think that's probably their focus, is just forget about this weekend. Let's go on to the next
Well,
one.
I think the constructors are still in reach for Ferrari.
Yeah.
I don't think the rate, like even despite Max's performance this weekend, I just don't think Red Bull are in that conversation for constructors anymore because of Checo, right? And not having that second car to build. And like this was a case where Max needed the equalizer in the rain to be able to win this weekend. It's in that way, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I'll say this to the high heavens. Incredible performance, right? Best we've ever seen, probably in the wet. But again, it was in the wet, right? Race. If this was a dry race, I don't know if he wins this or if he finishes in the top 5, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I think when Vegas comes around, I think Ferrari will have a better showing and will be more Ferrari versus McLaren in that regards. But I just, I can't get over this comment that Lando Norris made after the race about how this is a very short clip. I mean, we don't get the full context here, but basically what he described Verstappen's win as more, it wasn't talent, it's not talent, it's just luck. And I think that is a pathetic comment to mention. Like, talk about being a sore loser after a race in the sense where Matt, you have multiple drivers. Like, you had Lewis Hamilton, you had Fernando Alonso, you had Nico Hulkenberg. Like, comment on IG post for Max saying that was a greatest performance they ever witnessed in the rain. Like performance of the GOAT sort of idea, right? Legendary performances. And just for, Norris, who again lost his lead on the first lap and did not have a good race, went off a couple times. To make that comment is just very sore loserish, in my opinion.
Can I just add in one point? Also, just on Fernando Alonso finishing the race with a really bad back, because I think he was having some driver issues and you can see he was struggling. And it was kudos that he finished it and, said to the engineers, I'm doing this for you guys, but like my back is killing me. To the Lando comment, yes, we probably don't have the full context of it, but to say that it's, quote, it's not talent and it's just luck, maybe is a reason why you probably are not going to win you didn't win the drivers championship this year. And if you're only going to win 3 races, I think it is, then maybe you're being a sore loser and like you just got outclassed, and at moments at this time this season you got outclassed and outperformed, and at times that you were in leadership positions or at the front of the grid, and maybe it is karma. Sorry,
I understand he got unlucky with the pit stop timing in with the safety car and then going from virtual safety car to safety car, then going to the red flag, right? I understand that, but there needs to be a level of accountability here where you did everything in your power not to win the race, put it that way. You didn't perform to the level that you should have. And he had an opportunity this weekend, Ricci, to like close up the gap.
They fumbled it. They
fumbled the bag. I can't believe it. Right? So take your medicine, Lando. Understand that this was like this is a momentous title setback. And to say like that type of comment, again, just rubs people the really wrong way, because you can't deny how fantastic of a race that was for Max. And I don't care if I sound like a Max fanboy right now by saying it. You have to honor greatness when it's in front of you, and that was greatness in Brazil.
Look, if Charles got like a $5,000 fine for dropping a swear word during a press conference,
he got 10,000.
10,000. Where does the money go to? I hope it goes to a charity.
I know, but he got $10,000 for that fine, and then Lando, who completed a complete safety, like a massive safety violation, right? Avoiding, the cases where we have stewards on, we have like volunteers on track trying to help out Stroll, and there's a reason why the green light didn't go off so that they could get off the track safely before you could do the restart. Huge safety infringement, especially in the wet. And to do that, and you only get a $5,000 reprimand, I'm like, give me a break, FIA. What do you just freaking roll what is this Wheel of Fortune to figure out what the hell the fine is?
Well, not only that, I don't know if you saw it. There must have been a marshal in the Red Bull's garage. I don't know if you saw this during the race, and I guess he was in the garage when Max did a really good overtake, and so the garage is clapping, and then all you see is the marshal clapping too. So it's like, look, if Charles has to get paid 10 grand for a friggin' swear word at a press conference, like talk to your marshals. You got some questions there. But can we
speaking of press conferences, Max Verstappen had the line of the absolute year this year and just stuck it to the British media, and it was just so beautiful in a way. I couldn't believe it. And if you haven't watched the video, you need to see it. But here's the comment. It goes, they're in their post-race press conference. He's got Ocon to his right, he's got Gasly to his left, and he makes the comment, I have a quick question.
I have a quick question here. I mean, I appreciate all of you being here, but I don't see any British press. They had to run to the airport, or they don't know where the press conference is.
And I thought that was the best clapback moment of all time, because he was just getting criticized by British media this entire past 10 races, and just to shut them up, it was fine. It was fun to see, because I too get some tired of the British narrative of, Lando and whatnot. And they were probably, and I bet you the reason why they were not at the press conference is because they had to write a bunch of articles as to why they can't change tires on a red flag anymore.
Two things also is if you watch that press conference, Esteban Ocon's face. Well, also it helps when it's like two new people coming into the Max Verstappen podcast room. And then Pierre Gasly like responded, I think, with not on the mic saying, "That's a fair question. Where are they?"
Yeah, and then Ocon's face of like, right, just going around. It was perfect. And honestly, one of the more, it was too bad that they had to cut the cool down room conversation short because I had never seen three people that genuinely happy to be in the cool down room. Generally the second or third place are upset that they made a mistake, which cost them the race, sort of idea. But not like Pierre and Esteban were just so pumped up about finishing on the podium, and then they had Max, like who hadn't won in like 10 rounds. He was friggin' pumped up. So it was just a nice cool down room experience, and unfortunately had to be cut short for the celebrations.
Yeah, I think maybe the closest ones would probably be when like the Ferraris are in there, or like maybe Charles and Carlos with Max, and like it all depends of who is in that room. I guess any final comments of the weekend? I mean, there's just now we kind of see.
I would say the check that Williams and Aston Martin are going to be writing this weekend for damages are going to be hella expensive, particularly Williams, because both their cars were just completely destroyed over the course of the weekend. And
You lose.
I don't want to see what that bill is going to be like after.
Well, they'll just have to party a lot in Vegas because that's when probably the next drive, the 2024.
They might not be able to party in Vegas, Ricci.
Oh yeah,
They might have to put the equivalent back on black or something to get even for the past 2 weeks.
On that note, I think we can end this week's episode of the F1 podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media channels. There you have it. Max Verstappen wins in 100-something days. We got an exciting race to watch in Vegas in a couple of weeks. Andrew?
I'm just going to say this. If Max Verstappen wins the World Drivers' Championship in Vegas, imagine the after party that's going to go down in the Sin City.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I guess. But hey, we'll see. Probably the Omnia at what is it, Caesar's Palace? Yeah, but we'll see where they put them. Anyways, on that note, this is this week's episode of the F1 podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media. Keep posted. We might be doing another watch party for the Las Vegas Grand Prix at Trinity Common, but check on social media leading up to the weekend. Thanks so much again, and we'll see you next week.